Time for past performance. Leafs Ducks. Up from January, a 5-0 win for the Anaheim Mighty Ducks. Greg Millen joins us now. And Greg, a slow start for the Ducks this season as they're 1-5 after a really solid preseason, but I know how you feel about the preseason. So.
Well, exactly. And last year they had a slow start as well, if you remember, but they had an excuse, of course, going overseas and then coming back and having a very difficult schedule when they did come back. A little different this year, as you mentioned. They had a good preseason. I talked to Randy Carlyle coming into the rink this evening, and he said, quite frankly, my big players aren't playing right now, and my big line, which is now still pretty young, with Perry and Getzlaf and those type of players up front, just aren't doing it at the moment. And he needs more production. Their power play, just one power play goal in the season, and they're struggling, and they're spending way too much time in the penalty box at the moment as well.
Well, a combined -9, these two guys, Greg, and I ask you, how do kids with huge expectations on their shoulders suddenly right the wrongs of what's gone on for the last 6 games?
I think you just have to play. Yeah. You get to a situation where you bottom out, and normally to come out of situations like the Ducks are in, not only individually but as a team, it's all about work ethic. And they've got a coach that really emphasizes lunch pail type work ethic. And I know, because I played with Randy Carlyle, I know that he is all over these kids right now. He is not letting them off the hook, and it is all about creating good habits in practice, which will carry on to game time situations.
And the one issue with the Anaheim Mighty Ducks is they depended on that line so much last year. They were one of the lowest scoring teams in the league, but they had 3 great energy lines and 1 scoring line. They tried to bring in Brendan Morrison to help support those guys, along with Teemu Selanne, who's here from the start of the year, but those guys aren't producing either. So there's a lot of pressure to find some offense for this team, and it's a familiar story to what we were having right here in Toronto.
Yeah, and not only that, let's remember now, with a one-line team that's a young line, you know what everybody's doing? They're putting out their checkers or their big guys and their big defense pairings against them, which is uncharted waters for these kids. A couple of years ago, they could sneak under the radar being the second line.
Well, it's been a tough week for Ryan Getzlaf. Underwent a little minor dental surgery for a gum infection this morning. And Corey Perry, I don't think, guys, has been under this much pressure since he was slinging mattresses in the warehouse in Peterborough for Sleep Country Canada. Things are a lot better these days. We're hoping they get better here tonight against the Maple Leafs. And this morning they talked to the media about the problems that have addressed their team and them specifically.
Well, we don't have an answer for why we're 1-5, but no, it's we just gotta keep creating the bounces for this last few games, and against Edmonton and Carolina, we've been playing our style of game. We got one result against San Jose, we got a win, and then against Carolina we had a bad, tough bounces at the end, and they capitalized on their chances, and we didn't. If we just keep going that hard and stick on the ice, they're bound to go in sometime.
Is it frustrating knowing how strong and how talented this team actually is to be struggling out of the game?
It is frustrating. It's, nobody likes losing, that's for sure. But we got to take it in stride and just put a little bit of pressure back on us and to get our wins and play our style of game. So if we're doing that, we're going to be okay. And like I said, the bounces are going to come.
We can only look forward from now, and the last few games we've been playing better and better, and we hope to get a good result today.
Is it, I guess, frustrating knowing, a year and a half ago, Stanley Cup champs, everybody has that, that target on you guys, and a lot of people, everybody gets up for the Ducks no matter who it is.
Yeah, well, I think the pressure more comes within the locker room. We know what kind of team we have here and what we can do, and we just got to play like it every night. And as we come together as a group here, it's been more and more, and been better and better in the last few games, and we're looking forward to continuing on.
Well, Greg, have cap problems affected this team perhaps more so than any other team? And I know Lou Lamoriello knows what he's doing when it comes to getting under that cap and surviving it. But how's Brian Burke handled himself and all the problems he's had the last couple of years?
Well, I'm not so sure it is cap problems, but it's related to winning a Stanley Cup. When you win a Stanley Cup and you have players coming off contracts, you got to pay them. You don't have any choice. And when you do that, things have to give in a cap world, and it makes it very difficult, and it will make it very difficult in the future for teams to win back-to-back cups or more than that because of the cap. Now, the Detroit Red Wings, they've been getting away with it so far with some terrific management. As for the Ducks, Brian Burke didn't have any choice. You lose players like Andy McDonald and Schneider, and if you can go down the list, Bobby Ryan in the minors, you lose those kind of players, and it's very difficult, and it's all because of issues, because you had to sign players for bigger prices than you might have liked, and then you get hurt in the cap.
Ken Holland's going to go through this mark in the very near future, and he's got a bunch of UFAs coming up. Franson and Zetterberg come to mind immediately.
Well, absolutely. The only thing you think that might give him a little leeway is some of those older players might move on to retirement rather than moving on elsewhere, especially if they are able to repeat a second Stanley Cup. But it is a product of good reward. Winning championships, you get rewarded as a player with higher contracts, and it's one of those tendencies now that you're seeing some GMs go with those longer term contracts that you're expecting these guys to win and win consistently throughout, and you only have to pay them that one time.
Except what happens if the cap goes the other way, and then the long term becomes a real problem, and many think that it will go the other way at the start of next season, so stay tuned.
All right, Greg, before we send you downstairs to get down to business, let's talk about your minute. What's your rant about today? Millen's Minute, here we go.
Not really a rant today. If you talk about the situation, I know, I'm sorry,
come
Jody,
on.
but 4 years ago is when we had the lockout, and we made some terrific rule changes. And the more I watch this league, the more these rule changes are coming into play. Remember the hooking and the holding that was going on before the lockout? It was ridiculous, and it took all the speed out of the game. Not anymore. You have to be able to skate in this game to survive more than I've ever seen it since I've been in the National Hockey League. All the great teams now that are winning at the moment, if you look at the Montreal Canadiens down the road, they are fast. Dominic Moore for the Toronto Maple Leafs, a player that perhaps couldn't play in the league 4 years ago, now is becoming a real good player in this league because of the speed. One more note, a rule change this year that's starting to come to the forefront already, and I love it. When you're on the power play, of course, you get the face-off in the offensive zone. And the power plays, I know it's early. It's very early.
It's very early.
But the percentages are unbelievable. 40%. The top 10 teams at the moment are over 20% on the power play. I do think this trend will continue because of that face-off rule. If you're good in the draws and you get an offensive chance right away because of it, it's an awful good rule for guys that like the power play.
I think that was a little bit of a rant. I enjoy the rant.
It was a positive rant.
Thank you very much, Greg Millen.
You're welcome.
We're going to talk some more defense to the Toronto Maple Leafs after a quick break. As we take you to break, here's a look at Luke Shen.